There we go. Hello, everybody. Hey, I think some of you get to see that there's a lot of work that is behind the scenes to set a lot of stuff up. And so I'm very, very thankful to have an awesome team. I had people come here early to help me set up. We had Wayne and Gail and Tom, and I just appreciate that for the audio visuals. And then Patty had a huge group to help set up with tables and doing everything. And so we want to say thank you, thank you, thank you very, very much. I've got a Zoom team in the very back. So you've been seeing us talking about the Zoom and making sure that they can hear. I don't know how we have quite a crowd, I believe, on Zoom right now. I don't know exactly the number, but there are other people watching from home. And so this is always available for you. In addition to that, this one will be recording, which you saw just a minute ago. We were starting the recording. And I will put it out in the next newsletter and you can see it because we will be recording Dr. Soileau. And yes, he will be here. Just as an FYI to all of you guys, Dr. Soileau is actually speaking nationally as we are right now meeting. He's in another room and he is with Parkinson Movement Disorder Alliance and doing a presentation. So he will be finishing that presentation at 3:00 and then walking from one room over here to us, and then we'll be presenting live to us. So it's quite exciting around here. But anyway, I'm Mary Jane Berry, and I am the facilitator for GAPS. That's Georgetown Area Parkinson Support Group. And I have been with this group as the leader now 13 years. My husband has Parkinson's. Many of you guys know that. He's had it for about 20 plus years. And we say it doesn't stop us, but it'll slow us down a little bit. Yep. But we're still blowing and going. He's the one that's giving out the door prizes. So speaking of that, I hope everybody got your ticket because we got some great door prizes. And the door prizes have been donations. So if you are ever at your place that you patronize often and you think it'd be a great door prize, go on and ask them for a door prize on behalf of GAPS, and we'll give it out for sure because I'm just about to run out of door prizes that I've collected. All right, moving right along. Just was talking about the tickets, so be sure you got your ticket for sure. And it'll be after the meeting that we will be drawing for those door prizes. Wanted to be sure and let you know this is the agenda. As you can see, Dr. Soileau should be here around 3:15-ish, and that's when we will be doing his talk. And then after that, we have exercise with 413, fitness and boxing. And we're very, very fortunate not only have Carrie, who's always here at Georgetown, but for sure Christy, who is the big boss, and she is here. So it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be a fun class. And wanted to let you know about the T-shirts. I have ordered 72 more T-shirts. They will be here at the December meeting or get together. As a reminder, and to go on and give you a heads up, we will not have a meeting in November. The fourth Thursday falls on Thanksgiving, and I know you want to be with your family. So we will not have a meeting in November, but we will meet in December for a holiday party. We will not have a speaker, but we're going to have entertainment. It'll be fun. We'll have our annual cookie exchange, which is really fun. It's kind of the length of those tables over there, all filled with cookies that you get to sample while you're here, and then you get to take home. So it's really a lot of fun. That's going to be on December the 14th. So be sure you stay tuned to all of my emails and newsletters so that you can get that. The T-shirts will be at that December meeting, and I should have plenty of them of all the sizes that you might need. All righty. Wanted to give a recognition to ACC, Austin Community College. They're in the back right there. The ladies in a pretty turquoise. They are doing free blood pressures. So if this meeting really excites you and you want to go have your blood pressure checked, you can go back even in the meeting to go check it out. But anyway, it's really good. You can't really see it, but in the very corner, their instructor is Arlene Detman. And Arlene Detman was my roommate in nursing school. And we will have our 50th anniversary of being RNs next year. So we've known each other a long time, but yeah. So that's a picture of Arlene and myself. It's a little hard to see though, but we used to have a lot. We still have a lot of fun, but we had a lot of fun then, I tell you. Okay. Okay. Sponsorship. This could not be possible without all of our sponsors. So as you see everybody around, I'm going to kind of acknowledge them on the slide screen, but they actually fund and help us pay for our exercise instructors. They also help us to fund the facilities where we give money back to the facilities that allow us to meet here. In addition to all of the stuff like to operate the Zoom as well as our website, all of that is as a result of all of our sponsors here. And we want to thank them very, very much. The first one I'll acknowledge is Medtronic. Medtronic is over there. There you go. You got David and Candace. So if you want to learn any more about DBS, they're one of the representatives of some of the DBS products that are out there. We have Abbott. Abbott is right here in the back. You've got Damon and Donnie, and they also have a DBS program, and you can definitely just talk to them. We have Amy Dukes with New Placid. She was supposed to be here, but unfortunately she was not able to make it. But I still want to acknowledge that she helped us out with funding. We have Embresia. Embresia, we got Kim Davenport over there. And this is an off medication, and I'm sure Dr. Soileau might even be addressing that as well as the DBS meds. We have Visiting Angels in the far corner over here. This is Stacy Scarborough. She's absolutely great. Many of y'all are familiar with Visiting Angels, so be sure you check that out. We have with Supernus, we have Will Barreto and Allison. Will, I know, is rushing to get here, actually. Oh, there he is. Okay, he hasn't set up his table yet. He got caught in traffic. But Will is here with Supernus, and we want to say thank you very, very much.
This is 7.
We have Pam Health. Pam Health is a rehabilitation facility that you can go to for both inpatient, outpatient. And so be sure you stop by and check them out. We have Kara that is with Insight Tech, which is a focused ultrasound. And again, she's a wonderful person to talk to learn more about that. Boston Scientific, we've got Rosemarie here representing. We also have Suzanne, but it looks like Rosemarie's going to handle it herself. So, by the way, all of them have some pretty good cookies and good stuff there. So check it out.
Yeah.
Abby is here. We've got Erin right over there. And even she got her boss lady here, Kimberly. Yes, Kim used to come a lot. Yeah, we're glad to see both these guys. So thank y'all so much for coming. And Neil with Rytari. There we are. We've got our Rytari rep. So many of you guys are on Rytari. If you have questions about Rytari, if you have a question about the cost of Rytari, go on and talk. They have some recommendations for you. So be sure you check with them and talk to them about that. Then we also have the Grand Living, which is where we have our GAPS educational luncheons. That's Tiffany back there in the corner. And she also has some really good cookies too. But for sure, y'all check out and say howdy to Tiffany. And then what I want to say, speaking of the Grand Living, on November the 10th, that's going to be Friday, we are going to honor our veterans by having a kind of a dessert, social, and a video that we are working with Parkinson Foundation. And this is going to be very, very nice. There's going to be some very nice patriotic door prizes that we will be giving out also. And it'll be set up. Anita is standing up. Anita, raise your hand. Anita is helping me to coordinate this. Yeah, there she is. She's doing a great job. And you could just sign up. It's totally free for you. But again, it is to honor our veterans. But anybody is welcome to come. It's going to be on advanced planning with Parkinson's. So you're all welcome to come to it. It's going to be at 2:00. So a different time than our normal luncheon. Normal luncheon is at 12. This one's going to be at 2:00, and it'll be a dessert kind of social fun thing. So be sure you check it out. And again, we're doing it jointly with Grand Living and the Parkinson Foundation. So it'll be awesome. Wanted to be sure and tell our caregivers, I put on here, we're going to have a caregivers meeting on November 9th. We are not. I will send out an email to them. On November 9th, this church becomes a Christmas spectacular. I don't know if anybody's ever been to their big holiday Christmas spectacular. It really is fun. You guys would love it. Lots of shopping. But anyway, so we're going to be booted out. But I will try to send something out so that perhaps we can maybe have a luncheon or do something kind of fun. So anyway, stay tuned to your emails on that one. Our GAPS mantra, as you all know, is to educate, which is the purpose of the meetings, to exercise, which by all means is what we do with our classes we offer free as well as with 413, and to socialize. That's why we actually meet here at 2:30 so you can start to socialize, so you can get to meet and see everyone. and make some connections. One of the things that's so important about that is particularly for our new folks to know that you're not alone. So if I could just have some folks raise your hand, how many are first time coming here to our meeting? Is there any first timers? Okay. All right. Super. So we are here to help you out. And by all means, please come up and say howdy to me and so I can connect with you. I know at the beginning of the meeting, I seem kind of hectic. Well, I am trying to get it all together. But anyway, we're here to help. Okay, so this is some of the free classes that we offer. I know it's probably a little hard to see up there, but the bottom line is that we have music therapy and vocal exercise every Monday. So we have that on the second and fourth Monday. We have a speech therapist that comes. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have partnered with Sun City Fitness. Sun City actually allows non-residents to take their classes. So you're more than welcome to come check out with me to let me know if you have any questions on that. But it's on my email that I sent out on who to contact. But that's every Tuesday and Thursday. On Wednesdays, we offer chair yoga, which is right across the street at the Church of Christ. That's at 11:30. And then we have a great class with Power for Parkinson's, and that is at 1 o'clock. And all of those are just right here. So by all means, for sure, check those out. But in addition to that, we've got ping pong. Let's see, Don, is Don here? If Don could just raise his hand. Don helped me get that started, and he's doing a great job. In fact, there's quite a few fellas that are doing ping pong as well as ladies. Anybody that's done ping pong, raise your hand. How many? Okay, super. Yeah. Well, we got some folks. So thank you so much for that. And we have art therapy. Art therapy is really, really fun. And we didn't have the class in October because, again, we got booted out. That's what happens when we have a free facility. Sometimes I get booted out. But we'll make it the next time. But for sure, we'll have art therapy in November. This is a couple of pictures of our singers, and we had fun. And then just a couple of pictures right here on the very bottom of our Power for Parkinson class.
That restaurant.
I'd like to, at this time now, to call up my board. I have a board that is just awesome that has supported GAPS. GAPS just became a nonprofit. Well, in all sincerity, just right at 2 years ago. And these are the founding members of the board. So Stacy and Julie, if you can come up, and Damon, if you can come up, and Stephen, I believe, is here. Patty.
The 8 diners. It accommodates.
This is our board, and Dr. Soileau should be here too. Oh, he's here. Yay. Oh my goodness. Right off of national television and Zoom. I mean to tell you, this is incredible. Yes. Okay, well, let's see. We got everybody here. Now, this is really exciting for me. Yeah, where's Kanal? He didn't make it. Oh, doggone it. Because I was going to say, this is the first time we've all been together, but that's right. We're missing Kanal. Darn. Well, I will take this time, though, to go on and do a couple of things here. We're going to get a picture of them before they all leave. But what I want to be sure and let you know is this board is great. And it's a 2-year commitment. And a couple of these folks need to step down because of other commitments in their family and personal lives. However, the remaining board is staying on board, as far as I know, for a little bit longer, because they can stay on for 2 more years. I hope. All righty. But on behalf, and I'm going to give this to Damon, on behalf of TAP DBA GAPS, that's what we're called, we would like to thank you as a founding member. And that is something that all of these folks have recognition. They're founding members. And Damon is stepping down, but we're actively seeking new board members. So by all means, let us know if you're interested in that. But we have a special one also who is stepping down too. We're really sad to see him go, but he's not really leaving us because Dr. Soileau is our medical consultant for GAPS. We always have access to him, but as a board member, he is stepping down also. Yeah. So I tell you, y'all, it's been an honor and just been fabulous to work with each one of you guys. And I'm glad the rest of them are staying on. Stacy is staying on with Visiting Angels, and Stephen is staying on with Loud and Clear and all of his commitments. Dr. Soileau as our medical consultant. Julie is staying on, and she is our resident ambassador with Davis Finney, Michael J. Fox. So she's got a lot of connections. And then Patty is staying on as a board secretary And she is my right arm and my left arm. I couldn't do anything without her. So anyway, but we want to take their picture real quick. So hold on real quick. Let me get your picture. Okay, so Anne, can you? There we go. Well, that was just perfect timing. In fact, we were timing it with Dr. Soileau because, yeah, like I say, he has just gotten off of a Zoom, a national Zoom that he was presenting on, and so we feel very, very fortunate to have him here in person. Dr. Soileau, and I've got a fabulous write-up about him. Oh my goodness, this is your bio. It's just fabulous. Yes, I really did a lot of research on you. So I won't totally bore you, but he grew up in Lumberton, Texas, which is in southeast Texas. Went to Baylor University, graduated from there, went to University of Texas Medical School in Houston. Ann Arbor, Michigan is where he completed his neurology residency. And at that time, that's when he realized that he wanted to go into movement disorders. And we are just so grateful to have him here. He is actually the owner and the CEO of Texas Movement Disorder Specialists. And what's really, really neat about this is he's doing research right here in Georgetown, Texas. He's got a whole lot of research that he's doing. He'll probably talk about that. But in addition to that, he's received numerous honors and awards, peer review papers. He's authored several medical neurological books. He's done abstracts. He teaches neurology online courses and is a professor at the Texas A&M. Yes. And he is now going to be the new president for the Texas Neurology Association that is for the state of Texas, which is really awesome. He's just quite accomplished, and we're very, very fortunate to have him. I love his format. I'm assuming you're doing the same Q&A, which is just a fabulous format, but we just want to say thank you. But I want to also point out that besides all of that he has done, his two loves, of course, this is his office staff. If you can see the picture up here, he's got a great group that he is working with. They're wonderful. But then the picture to my right, which would be hopefully, I guess, how y'all are seeing it, is his family. He is married and the father of 3 sons. So, you know, the TV show, My 3 Sons? Well, he's got the My 3 Sons. So anyway, but give us a warm welcome for Dr. Soileau.
Thanks, everyone. It is so good to be here speaking to all of you. This is like my home crowd. I don't know if those of you who have been to other programs or other support groups in the state, or maybe even in the country, if you moved here and retired here, but truly from someone who travels all over the country. And I was just in Oklahoma yesterday and Arkansas the day before that at patient support groups. This is one of the best patient support groups in all of the country. And I mean that. So let's give Mary Jane and everyone a round of applause. So those of you probably know and get sometimes just as frustrated as I do when you only have so much time with your provider. Unfortunately, there are things out of my control, even insurance sets, all kinds of things, and you just want to be able to pick your provider's brain a little bit. And it's so hard to do that in this day and age. So rather than present a boring lecture, what I try to do is to just give an FAQ and let you fire away questions, and then I ask or I answer those, and kind of that'll spark more discussion. And usually, as long as no tomatoes are thrown, then you leave here feeling like you got your questions answered. And it's kind of like an informal sit down or a fireside chat, if you will, with a movement disorder doctor. And it's my favorite way to do these talks. Before I get started, there's a couple of things I want to tell you. So first of all, we have a new addition to our office. As you know, we have Meredith, who has been with me for almost 7 years, who's one of our PAs. And Kinsey, one of our PAs, went on to work at the Movement Disorder Clinic at the University of California, San Francisco, or UCSF. I mean, that's one of the best clinics in the country. And we had a part in helping her see her love for movement disorders. And so she's no longer in Georgetown, Although I do think it's funny, one of our patients wrote her a 20-page bullet point list, not 20-page, 20 bullet points of why she should not move to California. And I said, only our patients would do that. So that was funny, and we got a good laugh out of that. But I am pleased to welcome Karina Patel. Karina, stand up and wave to everyone. Give her a warm GAPS welcome. I think this is her first GAPS meeting, hopefully not her last, because she is wonderful. Let me just brag on her for a second. She has a heart that's really after helping people. And I've got a saying in my office that, you know, I can always teach movement disorders, but I can't shape a person's heart. I can't change a person's heart. And so part of the requirement to be in my office is that you have a heart who loves other people and who's compassionate and kind, and she is. And so I just want to welcome her. I also want to tell you that my family's in the back too, and that's always very special. So wave to the Soileaus. This is our church too, so it's always fun to kind of come here for, you know, something else like a GAPS group. And then vendors, they're going to raid all your stuff. I'm just going to tell you. So they're going to come and get snacks and all kinds of stuff. So be ready for that. Before I get started with FAQs, I want to remind you, as Mary Jane alluded, that we do clinical trials right here in Georgetown, Texas. At one point last year, we had 10 clinical trials going on. 10. You don't have to go to Houston. You don't have to go to Dallas. Right here in your neck of the woods, we have state-of-the-art clinical trials. In fact, we even have to turn down trials oftentimes. And right now for Parkinson's, we have 3 trials I want to bring to your attention. Karina has some stuff in the back. If you're interested after the talk today, you can talk to myself and Karina, and we'll be back there. But the first trial is of a neuromodulation device that is worn on your head. And it is for non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's. Remember, that's the other stuff that doesn't move. So constipation, urinary urgency, mood, sleep, thinking, all that stuff. And so it's a device that's being studied right now on improving those non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's, which is, as you know, oftentimes one of the most difficult things to treat. Now, it's also being looked at for the motor symptoms, but the primary endpoint is for the non-motor symptoms. That's called the STEM-PD trial. STEM-PD trial. And again, there's some more information on clinicaltrials.gov, which is the national repository of clinical trials. And then also we can tell you more about it. The second trial is there is something called dopamine-resistant tremor. So many of you may know that if you take your medicine, it works great, perhaps for stiffness or slowness, but sometimes tremor can be a little bit more stubborn, and tremor can persist even when you take your medicine by mouth. And so that is called a dopamine-resistant tremor. Well, for the first time, we're having medicines that are being studied for dopamine-resistant tremors. And so there's a study called the JAZZ PD study, and it's using a compound that's for treating tremor of a dopamine-resistant tremor in Parkinson's disease. And so we have some brochures in the back for that as well. And then lastly, and rarely is this the case in our clinic, but if you are a patient with Parkinson's who has never had levodopa before, and you're just on other medicines to treat Parkinson's, but not levodopa, then there is another medicine being looked at it's called a dopamine partial agonist. Big words, but all that means is that it mimics dopamine. And previously we had meds that mimic dopamine, but the thing about those is they usually come with some side effects. But this stimulates the good dopamine receptors without stimulating the bad dopamine receptors. So it's being looked at for those patients. We had the trial of that same medicine in those who were already taking levodopa, and around the country, there was such a robust trial that now it's closed and the data is being crunched and calculated as we speak. So now the only thing that's still open for that trial are the folks that have not been exposed to carbidopa levodopa. So not only ourselves at our center, but also a colleague of mine, dear colleague, Dr. Peckham at her center south of us in Round Rock, we all do a lot of research. And so I encourage you to look at what's available. And there are trials. Everyone always says, well, I don't want to take a chance of being on the placebo arm. But let me remind you, placebo is not always a bad thing. If I give you a sugar pill and I say that this is going to help your Parkinson's, and it does, that's not a bad thing. In fact, it actually shows how amazing our brain is and how fearfully and wonderfully made we are. And so, however, it's also important in the same token to be objective and to have good scientific studies. So that's why most of our studies have a placebo-controlled arm where we can truly draw conclusions that are relevant and scientific. But I try to pick studies that not only have a placebo arm, but that also gives the opportunity to have what's called an open label extension or a crossover design. And what that means is that even if you're randomized, I don't know and you don't know, if you're on a placebo, you'll have the opportunity later on in the study to get into the active ingredient arm. That way, it's kind of a win-win situation there. So this is where we're at, folks. Lots of good research going on in an effort to treat Parkinson's disease. And we're pumped up and very excited about that. And I hope you can tell that. So I would encourage you to look into it because patients that have often participated in these studies are glad that they did. They learn a lot, and it's fun for us because we get to sit down and just chat in a way that's not rushed. And I love that. And so again, Karina will be at the back and can answer questions along with myself at the end and answer questions for you too. All right, so let's get started. First and foremost, I'll just open it up to you and let's see if any of you have any questions about Parkinson's disease. Yes, ma'am, in the back, very first question. Yeah. Yeah, great question. And I'll repeat the question, so don't worry if you didn't hear. The question is, can you tell me more about stem cell therapy? And number two, can you tell me more about light therapy? So let me start with light therapy first. So, you know, never did I think I would be involved in a clinical trial using a neuromodulating device that goes over the ears like this. But I never say never when it comes to Parkinson's disease. You never know what may be found to be helpful in Parkinson's. So there are different radio frequencies of light that are thought to maybe help improve a variety of different things, pain. Certainly it's being looked at for Parkinson's. To my knowledge, there's not a lot of detailed, robust scientific data that shows that the light therapy is very beneficial for Parkinson's disease in terms of changing the course of Parkinson's or helping treat the motor symptoms or non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's. However, with that being said, you know, more studies need to be done. That's for sure. There is a very big component of placebo, as I already mentioned. And so we find that with different physical therapy and different techniques that light therapy or laser therapy can be very helpful, but how it works and whether or not it's very objective in a double-blind placebo-controlled trial, that jury's still out. So, but that doesn't, what I usually say is, if it doesn't hurt you, I have no objections to it. However, sometimes it can be very costly. Therapy is like that. And so you just want to be mindful of that. So when you're presented with a variety of different options, some of which have years and years worth of scientific data backed by double-blind placebo-controlled trials, or you have something that is maybe not that, but very intriguing, I always say it's fine to try those things, but you just want to, if you only have limited resources, put those resources where we know there's good data. And that's my approach. That's my style. Now let's talk about stem cells, because boy, that's a hot topic. So here's where we're at right now with stem cells. We can make dopamine cells. So what is Parkinson's? Parkinson's is a condition where these abnormal proteins build up in the brain, right? And that causes problems with the chemical called dopamine. That's right. And think of dopamine like gas in your gas tank. And who knows where Parkinson's starts? In your nose and in your gut. That's right. Blessing or a curse, right? If you can't smell. But that's where Parkinson's first starts. And then as that protein builds up in the brain and it goes to a place in the brain called the substantia nigra, it gets rid of the very important cells that produce dopamine. And it also affects the storage of dopamine. So guess what stem cells are trying to do? Replace those dopamine producing cells and help restore those cells so that we can have your own cells make its dopamine again and then help fix Parkinson's. That's the point, right? But here's where we are. We can make those dopamine cells, check. We can put those cells in the brain in the right spot, check. The challenge is that within a couple of months' time, those brand new, wonderful dopamine producing cells now look and act like all the other dopamine producing cells in your brain that are not working correctly. So something happens in that period when they're injected versus when they've sat there for a while and they stop working as they should. Something about that environment. So that sounds like an opportunity, doesn't it, for research, for us to figure out why that's happening? Because what if we had a medicine that could keep those cells healthy? So then you take the stem cells and then you take the medicine, and then now that keeps those cells from becoming abnormal. So that's where we are right now. Not quite ready for prime time. Lots of work that still needs to be done, but very important strides have been made along the way. So we'll see it. It's just a matter of when. So they're still in clinical trials right now, and they're not FDA approved. So Dr. Soileau, can I go to Mexico or Germany or some other places in the country and spend $30,000 and get the stem cells? Absolutely. But here we are again, where should we do something that has, double-blind placebo-controlled trials, years of data and safety behind that? Or should we do something that's very intriguing that could potentially be helpful, but very costly? And that's a question only you can answer, although I certainly have my opinions too. Okay, so thank you for that. It's an amazing question and one that we get asked all the time. Next question. Very back.
Piggybacking from her question on.
Yep.
And the only reason I know this, someone I know works or does work with this company, Celtex Therapeutics. Are you familiar with them?
I'm not familiar with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask so the next time I talk to them, I can at least have an answer for them, because you know how people always try to come up to you with helpful. So anyway,
Yeah.
I just was wondering if, because they do stem cell.
Now, stem cells are certainly used, by the way, in other conditions. For example, joints. All kinds of things are using stem cells. So what I'm speaking of is specifically of the brain, and I'm not familiar with that particular company, but again, it's not FDA approved. Now the FDA can be very tedious at times, and so they want to make sure that there is good, strong, robust data. And that's why you see some therapies come out in Europe and other countries before it makes it to the US. But again, all of that contributes to the big bowl of science, worldwide that we have. So every study, even in other countries, are still helpful to us. But yeah, I'll keep my ear open for that company. I think I saw some other hands. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
I had a question about the use of peptides, if there's been any studies on them, or if there's any specific peptides that have any benefits to people with Parkinson's.
Yeah, and I'll kind of extrapolate a little bit on that question too, and kind of, comment on a couple of things. So peptides are small protein particles that, and peptides is a very general term. There are specific ones that can help build amino acids, for example, which help make proteins and all kinds of stuff. So I'll kind of broaden that question into, are there any supplements or other kind of holistic things that can help Parkinson's disease. So, for example, a hot topic right now in brain health is inflammation. So there are people using peptides and as supplements and all kinds of stuff to help with inflammation. And we know that Parkinson's disease is not just simply about inflammation. If we give you steroids, if we give you anti-inflammatories, if we give you all of those things, even in the blood and by mouth, even in the brain, it doesn't change your Parkinson's. So there's more to it than just inflammation, you know, like a joint that's inflamed. There's more to it than that. However, there are some conditions, particularly involving what's called the mitochondria, which if you've ever heard of that, those are the powerhouse of the cell. Think of that like a generator of every cell that gives energy, that those can be helpful with Parkinson's. So things like CoQ10 and more supplements like that. We don't know to what extent it can help Parkinson's, but we know in some types of Parkinson's and even other neurological disorders, they can be helpful. They certainly don't hurt. That's for sure. So it really depends on the type of supplement. Another thing I get asked about is probiotics, and is probiotics helpful? Because that restores the environment of your gut and your gut health. And you know, one of the first places that Parkinson starts is in your gut. And we do have data that shows that probiotics are helpful in Parkinson's, and gut health is very important anyways, because those of you who feel like your medicine stops working with time, and then you call us up and say, hey, Dr. Soileau, my medicine's not working anymore. And then our staff says, have you pooped? And you say, well, maybe 5 days ago, 3 days ago. And we say, well, please, go have a bowel movement and then give us a call. And sure enough, medicine kicks in better. And why is that? Because remember that dopamine gets absorbed further in your intestine, not in your stomach. In fact, we say if it's in your stomach, where is it not? It's not in your brain. So when you're moving your bowels and you're giving them the opportunity to move, then your medicine actually gets better. But more and more is being looked at in terms of all that, in terms of supplemental products that can be helpful for Parkinson's disease. Great question. Other questions? Yes, sir.
DBS surgery. Can you participate in the trials?
That's a great question. So I'll repeat it for everyone to hear. When you have deep brain stimulation, are you still able to participate in clinical trials? And the answer is yes and no. And it depends on the trial. Depends on what's being looked at, right? So there are plenty of trials with all three of our deep brain stimulation companies that are looking at different things that DBS can help with, or different ways that we can make DBS care more efficient or better, higher quality. So there are plenty of clinical trials, and we participate in some of those trials too. However, there is often a push, or I should say a precedent, where for drug trials in particular, medication trials, that if you've had deep brain stimulation, those could be exclusionary, which means if you've had DBS, you can't really participate in that clinical trial. However, it depends on the trial. Also, just recently in the last few months, there was an article published in one of our movement disorder journals, an editorial, where they said, hey, DBS is so common these days that are we really doing right by our patients by excluding them from all these trials? Because it's so common and it's such a standard of care almost. And that's the feeling that most of us have actually in the front lines. And so don't be surprised if that precedent doesn't change a bit and pharmaceutical trials start to allow deep brain stimulation patients in their trials. But with that being said, for example, we did some trials involving some subcutaneous levodopa, and there was a trial where even DBS patients could participate in that particular trial. So it's not all trials that they can't participate in. It's only some of the trials. It depends on what's being looked at. And the reason that is, just so you know, is when you're and this makes good scientific method sense, right? If you're evaluating something, an intervention, like a medication, for example, you want to keep all other things steady and consistent so that when you see an effect, you know exactly what's causing that effect, whether it be a positive effect or a negative effect. You want to know exactly what's doing it. That's why when we make medication changes in our clinic, you know that we only make one change at a time. We start low and we go slow. That way we can scientifically evaluate whether something is causing a good effect or a negative effect. And that's why DBS patients aren't often allowed to participate in interventional trials like that. But that may be changing with time, and I hope it does. Thank you for that. And let me just piggyback on that question for a second and talk about deep brain stimulation. So what is deep brain stimulation? So DBS is what made me want to be a movement disorder specialist. The very first time I ever saw, I was going to be a pediatric surgeon. And then I got introduced to neurology in medical school. And I walked into a clinic once and I saw a guy in a wheelchair who had Parkinson's and just got his DBS placed. And it got turned on for the first time, and his family was crying and I was crying, and he got up out of his wheelchair and walked. And I'm like, oh my gosh, sign me up. Where do I sign? You know, I want to do this. And so it was remarkable, and it was an amazing therapy. And that was then. It's gotten even better now. And now we're blessed to have 3 different companies, all of whom are here today, be involved with deep brain stimulation. So that is a very wonderful therapy that can help things with Parkinson's, for example, tremor, stiffness, slowness. It can help with those things. For example, if someone's on a lot of medication for their Parkinson disease and we're able to do deep brain stimulation, we can reduce their medicines most of the time in half, by 50%, for most patients. And that's a very important thing. But there is a window of opportunity for deep brain stimulation. It is not meant to be a last resort. It's meant to be used earlier rather than later. So when do we consider something like DBS? Occasionally I'll have someone who's never tried a medicine and they'll come in and say, I want DBS. And I'll say, whoa, hold the horses there. Before we do a brain procedure, let's just try to take a medicine first, because we need to make sure you even respond to dopamine. So that's number one. In order to have deep brain stimulation for Parkinson's, you have to respond to dopamine. Number two, in order to have DBS for Parkinson's, you have to have Parkinson's for at least 4 years. Why is that? How many of you have heard about the cousins of Parkinson's, or the isms, the Parkinsonisms? Yeah, many of you have. So remember, not everything that looks like Parkinson disease is actually Parkinson disease. But typically in about 4 years or so of having symptoms, we're able to tell whether or not someone has Parkinson disease versus one of the cousins of Parkinson's. And deep brain stimulation is indicated for for Parkinson disease, not the cousins of Parkinson's. The other thing is, if particularly for one bullseye in the brain that we use to treat Parkinson's, if someone has a lot of cognitive problems in their Parkinson disease, in other words, they're demented, for example, then we don't want to do anything to make that worse. And some surgeries, particularly that one, can make that worse. Someone already has a lot of problems with cognition. So that's why part of our protocol, and every center's protocol, is to have a detailed cognitive test before proceeding with DBS. That's very, very important. And only then, after a surgeon and the movement disorder specialist talks to each other and talks about your case, should you proceed with Parkinson's surgery for DBS. Okay, so that's a little bit about deep brain stimulation. And again, I would encourage you to stop at the booths and talk about that. It's not a last resort. We like to do it sooner rather than later. And YouTube has some great videos of people that have had deep brain stimulation with some remarkable results. But not everyone has those same results. That's important to remember too. So, you know, Jane always says, one person with Parkinson's, you've seen one person with Parkinson's. So again, we like to make sure you're fully informed about the risk and benefits of those surgeries. Now, I'll also just piggyback off of that and say, but deep brain stimulation is not the only advanced therapy that we have. In fact, there's all kinds of things coming out, and we have a whole new class called device-aided therapies. So that covers not just deep brain stimulation, but that also covers different types of pumps. So many of you know and have heard me talk about Duopa, and we have a booth here today for that as well. And Duopa is something that can be useful in patients that have had lots of ups and downs or lots of dyskinesia or roller coasters with their medication. And the reason that's important to mention is that sometimes your sweet spot in Parkinson's is so narrow that sometimes it feels like you're darned if you do and darned if you don't. You know, you go up on your medicine and you get dyskinetic, meaning your gas tank's overflowing with dopamine, so you move too much. And then you reduce your dose a little bit, and now you can't move very well at all, and you feel heavy, and you feel like you're moving through molasses, and you're like, well, gosh, I just went up on my dose. I can't take that. I just went down on my dose. I don't feel good either. So I'll take the lesser of the two evils. Well, now you don't need to do that, because turns out how we deliver your medicine is very important. So for example, 0.1 mLs or 2 milligrams of dopamine is how precise we can dial in your dopamine when you're getting it through a pump. And fast forward, kind of like an insulin pump for a diabetic, if you're familiar with that concept. And fast forward, and some of you maybe even were in these trials, and we certainly did and are still doing our trials for subcutaneous or under the skin levodopa. But we even have 3 products right now before the FDA that are being looked at for under the skin, 2 of which are levodopa products, one of which is apomorphine infusion that's been in Europe for over 30 years, but we're just now hoping to get it FDA approved here. 3. So now we have this whole slew of treatments that can go underneath the skin for Parkinson's disease and deliver treatments continuously, which is what your brain does, turns out. That's why normally in our brain, it delivers dopamine continuously. And when I need to increase my dopamine a little bit, when I'm mowing the yard or whatever, it does that for me automatically. So if we're getting that via a pump, now we can do that, similar to what the brain should do. So this is when stuff gets really fun, because now we have all these therapies. We're blessed with these options to treat. Now, what if you're not there yet? What if you're not having those ups or downs yet? We have an amazing variety of medications here that people are here as well. We have background medicine, which is the levodopa and levodopa products, many of which are very helpful. I think we're up to 8 different versions of levodopa. That's just levodopa, 8. So, but sometimes you need rescue therapies, and I see some rescue therapies here as well, where maybe it's not all the time that you are having wearing off, but maybe it's some of the time. Maybe it's before your boxing or before your workout or before your golf game, and you just need a booster. And so we have options there. So to summarize all of that stuff, you thought you were just asking about DBS, but you know me. So to summarize all that stuff, it's all about the recipe. We're trying to create the perfect recipe, not for everyone, but for you, for your brain, trying to individualize your dosing of medicine. And you know me well enough to know that I do whatever it takes. Karina and Meredith do whatever it takes to try to accomplish that. And so, because we want to promote more independence and a better quality of life for those of you who have Parkinson's, that's why we're in this business, right? So again, very blessed. And I want you to leave here today feeling encouraged that you have options. That is the key. All right. So great question. Yes, ma'am. The question is, what's the age limit for DBS? That's different depending on the center that you go to. At our center, we don't have an age limit. It's not about an age, but it's about function. So if I have someone who's, I think the oldest patient I've ever done deep brain stimulation on for a tremor patient was 86 at the time. So, but she was able to be very high functioning, moving and grooving, you know, with her walker all over the place. And that's important, that from a health perspective, you're able to have that procedure done. But again, a lot of things have to be in place in order for you to be a good candidate for that. And so we still go through that protocol. Even if you're a 23-year-old with Parkinson's, we would still go through that exact same protocol in order to make sure you're a good candidate for deep brain stimulation. So that's a great question. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Question is, have I seen the vibrating glove that's been studied at Stanford? Shows you the power of the Today Show, doesn't it? Oh, really? Yeah. So that was a product that was featured on the Today Show, and literally overnight, movement disorder specialists around the country had an influx of phone calls, literally overnight, to get, you know, to ask questions about that. And just shows you the power of marketing and media. It's awesome. So yeah, that is a product that's out there. Again, still being studied, still being looked at improving off time. There are other products that are similar to that, same concept, even smaller, that have been shown to maybe be effective in Parkinson's disease and particularly tremor. And so, yeah, there's that stuff out there. It's not ready for prime time yet, but it's being looked at. And that's why I say the brain always keeps me humble. I never say never with products or therapies. You know, I never try to poo-poo crazy sounding things. You just never know what will be shown to be effective. So yeah, I try to be open-minded to anything that comes across our doorstep. So thank you for that. Yes, ma'am. Sure. Yeah, so the question was, we're told that certain professions may have a higher incidence of developing Parkinson's disease, like if you're exposed to pesticides or solvents, et cetera. I'll expand on that list. You know, manganese miners have been shown to have higher incidence of Parkinson's, exposure to Agent Orange, exposure to pesticides like paraquat and things like that. I'm sure you can turn on, you know, any news station these days and hear a variety of commercials for paraquat and also Medicare Advantage. It's amazing what your commercials are filled of these days, including me. I get phone calls of that too. I don't know what that says about me, but I'm not ready for Medicare yet. Not yet. But anyway, so it's true. There are certain things, environmental exposures, that have increased the risk of Parkinson's disease. So what does that mean exactly? That means that if patients are exposed to those things, then their risk of developing Parkinson's goes up more so than it would for the normal population, the normal incidence, if you will. However, that's not the full story, is it? Because there are plenty of patients that have never been exposed to Agent Orange, for example, but also get Parkinson's disease. And so that brings up the very important question of, well, then what causes Parkinson's disease? And the truth is, we don't know just yet. It's clearly more complex than pure environmental exposure. And what's a lot of fun is at some of our conferences, there are these debates, and they're purposeful debates. Someone has to take a pro and someone has to take a opposing side, and they get assigned a topic. Like, for example, Parkinson's disease is infectious. That's not the case, but they have to argue it. And it's really fun to listen to this. And that was one of the topics recently is Parkinson's caused by something that we're eating, that we're exposed to? Because, you know, it starts in the nose and it starts in the gut. So is it something that we're orally ingesting that's making us have Parkinson's? Truth is, we don't know, but there's a lot of data being looked at to try to evaluate that. And that brings to mind an important concept of confounding factors, big words that mean this. If I walk into a bar, this sounds like a joke, doesn't it? A doctor, an attorney, no. If I walk into a bar and I walk out with lung cancer, does that mean that bars give lung cancer? Or is it secondhand smoke? that gave me lung cancer? Or is it the peanuts that you ate? Or is it something that you drank? Or did you already have lung cancer before you walked into the bar, but walking into the bar made you more likely to show it? See how complex things get? So you have to be careful when reading or studying different things, because cause does not always equal effect. So just be cautious when you're critically appraising things that you hear on TikTok. Yes, even our 86-year-olds still look at TikTok, turns out, which I think is great, that they're looking at social media, not TikTok. But so you just have to be careful when you're critically appraising things. And so don't forget the step there in between is talk to your doctor about your questions and what you're learning. That way they can give you their 2 cents, because, this is what we do all day, every day. So we do have opinions, but I think it's very important that we find a cause for Parkinson's one day. And I think it's even more important that we diagnose it earlier, so that we can figure out how to prevent it from progressing. And that's the holy grail. So I appreciate that question, Judy. Thank you.
Dr. Soileau, we have some questions back here from Zoom. We have some Zoom
Yes.
questions.
I thought the Lord was calling me home. Although he shouldn't call me doctor. He should call me Michael. But go ahead.
This message comes from Gail Schul from the Belton Area Support Group. She says, a member of our support group learned that grant funding for Ambrosia till the new year. Can you speak about the benefit or not of that therapy?
Yeah, that's really a twofold question. So hello, BAPS, Belton Area Parkinson Society. Thanks for joining. So let me first talk about grant funding when it comes to brand name medicines. So don't even get me started on my soapbox about the cost of medications in the United States. That's a whole different thing, which is much more fun going to a bar and talking about that, by the way. However, I know for a fact that we personally use every resource we can to figure out how to get you the therapies that we think you need. I don't want an insurance company telling me what I need to prescribe you. I want to give you what I think you need. So we have partners that we work with, including industry partners that you see here. Also, pharmacies. We have certain pharmacies who just do it right, like Liberty Pharmacy with Canal is our local pharmacy here, but also other pharmacies around the state that specialize in Parkinson's things. And we'd use every resource we can to try to get you, our patients, what you need. And part of that, because of limitations in the United States when you're at Medicare age or older, is that you may not be able to use what's called a copay assistance card if you have Medicare. And that works fine if you're less than Medicare age, and they can really save you copays. But if you're Medicare age or older, because of federal funding and rules against that, you can't use copay assistance cards. So one thing that exists are different nonprofits that provide grant funding for you to get medicine. And many of you probably are on these, but they do run out of funding. But the thing is, that is literally a day-to-day thing. One day they will have it, and literally the next day they won't. And then one day they'll have it and they won't. That's why we work very closely with our pharmacies to make sure that when that list opens up, we want our patients on it, okay, quite frankly. And so we work closely with them because they know what they're doing. And you have to shop around sometimes. So we have heard the same thing, that grant funding is out for the moment. At the same time, though, if we have samples, we try to support our patients as best we can. Again, we do whatever it takes to try to get you what you need. And unfortunately, there are times when we're not able to do it and we have to take a back step and we have to go to a cheaper alternative. And I don't like that a bit, but that's a question for your congressman. Okay. All right. Secondly, let's talk about Ambrosia. You heard me say earlier that there are the background medicines like carbidopa, levodopa, like Rytari, things coming out that are similar to Rytari from Amneal, and then among other therapies like Neuriants. There are these background medicines that we use to treat Parkinson's. But then there are those medicines that help you on an as-needed basis. almost like a rescue medicine. For example, we have an injectable clicker pen called Apokyn that will help someone get unstuck or unfrozen. If someone has a lot of curling or cramping of their feet when their medicine or their dopamine is wearing off, you can give this medicine called Apokyn, and it can kick in within 10 minutes and 10 to 15 minutes and last on average about an hour to help bridge the gap there of when you're off versus back on. That's something that works quickly. It's very potent. Ambrosia is a similar concept. It's a medicine that you can inhale. It's levodopa that you inhale, and that kicks in within 10 to 15 minutes, and on average lasts about 60 to 90 minutes and can help bridge the gap when you're off versus back on again. So it's something that some of our patients carry with them and use it when they need it. And so these are very effective therapies that work on an as needed basis. You can take both of those therapies up to 5 times a day as needed to make sure that you get back into your sweet spot. Because remember, that's the name of the game. We want you to take your first dose of the day and quickly and efficiently get into your sweet spot. We want you to take all your other doses of medicine to keep you in your sweet spot or to keep your gas tank full. And then if you ever fall out of your sweet spot, we want to make sure you've got something to get you back there quickly and efficiently. That way you can keep moving and grooving, right? That's the whole point of how we treat Parkinson's. So again, we have Ambrosia and we have Apokyn, which are 2 as needed options for the treatment of Parkinson's. So again, brand name medicines are very costly. It costs a lot to do trials. It costs a lot to make. And part of that is because the FDA has the highest of standards in the world, which is not a bad thing, I'd say, to make sure these medicines get approved. But the real key is making sure that that gets into your hands. That's the key. All right. So hopefully that answered Gail's question, because that's a really practical and good question. Are there any other questions online? No? Okay. Other questions here? Yes, ma'am. Great question. Thank you for coming with the microphone. I'll repeat all the questions anyway. So the question is there any connection between Parkinson's disease and neuropathy? So let's talk about neuropathy. What is that? Remember, the most common nerves to be affected in your body from a problem are the longest nerves. And the longest nerves in your body are your feet nerves, the nerves that go down to your feet, right? They go from all the way from your spinal cord all the way down to your feet. So if they're not working correctly, let's say you have diabetes and you have a diabetic peripheral neuropathy, or let's say that you had chemotherapy at one point and they were damaged, unfortunately, as part of your chemo. The good thing about that is it shouldn't continue to get worse once you've had chemo. Then that can affect the nerves in your feet. And my brain, if I'm standing up here with my eyes closed, my brain depends on the nerves in my feet to send signals from my feet to my brain so that my brain knows exactly where my feet are. If I move my right foot forward and my eyes are closed, I know my right foot's forward because you have nerves that work in your feet that tell your brain that information. That's how we're connected. Okay, that's what neuropathy is. Now, what's the connection between neuropathy and Parkinson's? A lot of our patients with Parkinson's disease also have peripheral neuropathy. Of the types of neuropathy that we know that we can find the cause, diabetes or prediabetes is the most common cause. But not all neuropathy we identify has a cause. So, for example, if my vitamin B12 level is low, I could have a neuropathy because your nerves and your brain and your spinal cord needs vitamin B12 in order to function. So that's one of the labs that we do when someone has a neuropathy, because guess what? That's an easy fix. We just give you back B12 or B1, thiamine. That's another important vitamin that our nervous system needs. B6 is another important vitamin that our nervous system needs, but not too much. So you remember in the middle of COVID, the rage on social media was to take a lot of B6, but guess what? Too much B6 actually kills off your nerves. So You see why it's important to talk to your doctor before you do these things? So, but if we find that neuropathy and we find the cause, we can treat that in most cases. Now, there's also some emerging data that shows that if someone is on too much carbidopa-levodopa, that it can also contribute to neuropathy. And we don't know why that happens yet, but it can. And so that's why sometimes we will also have them take like a B vitamin complex when they're on carbidopa-levodopa. So that can be very helpful there too. But signs of neuropathy are burning in your feet, for example, and then also complete numbness and tingling in your feet. Those are signs of neuropathy. Those of you that have carpal tunnel syndrome know what that feels like too, because if you overuse your wrist by typing or writing or anything like that, that can also cause a neuropathy of your median nerve, which goes through the carpal tunnel, but that's not really related to Parkinson's, but that's a very common condition that patients know what that feels like. So if you have those same symptoms in your feet, it could be that you also have a neuropathy. And that's why our PT colleagues feel like it's so important, as do I, to get good physical therapy for gait and balance, because guess what? You have Parkinson's, so your balance takes a hit. Then I have arthritis in my spine, so my balance takes a hit. Then I have peripheral neuropathy, so my balance takes a hit. Now we're talking about the risk of falls. See how everything's connected? So that's why we really lean heavily on our PT colleagues to make sure that patients have good gait and balance training. So hopefully that answered that. It's a great question. Other questions? Yes, sir. Ah, good question. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Mhm. I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to. I'll repeat all the questions. So first of all, my last name, it's unique. It's not spelled like you would think it's spelled, because it's spelled Soileau. My kids don't even know what they're in for yet. It's a Cajun last name. I'm originally from Southeast Texas. So that's if you think of the word chateau, E-A-U-O, and then you think of S-O-I, Soileau, that's how you get swallow. Anyway, I don't speak any French. I barely speak English. But that's my last name. And yes, I should have been an ear, nose, and throat doctor, huh? Or a GI specialist. Yeah. So let's talk about dysphagia. That's the fancy medical term for trouble swallowing. So remember that your muscles have Parkinson's too. It's a brain problem. There's nothing wrong with your muscles. Your muscles are just doing what your brain tells them to do, but they need dopamine in order to work functionally in a beautiful symphony in concert with one another. But when you don't have dopamine, things don't work as they should. We know that. That's Parkinson's symptoms. So in order to coordinate the phases of swallowing, and I'm not going to do as good of a job as my friend Steven, the GAPS president, who's a speech pathologist, but there are these different phases of swallowing, and they have to coordinate with one another in order to take the food in your mouth, get it to where it needs to be so that you can initiate that swallowing reflex. And then the esophagus, your food tube, should take care of the rest and get it down into your stomach where it needs to go. But when that doesn't move right and that moves sluggishly, that's where Parkinson's folks have problems swallowing. Okay, so number one, and it's kind of a complicated thing, but in general, number one, it's important to make sure that your gas tank is full. If your dopamine levels are not where we want your dopamine levels to be, then you need to make sure that your gas tank is full as much as it needs to be. That way you can swallow at your best function. And there are exercises, by the way, that speech pathologists can do to help with that. The other important thing is to make sure that it's not going down the wrong pipe. So if food or saliva spit goes down the wrong tube, and instead of going into your food passageway, it goes into your lungs. That's called aspiration. And that increases your risk of pneumonia. And that's a dangerous thing for our patients. So again, we do everything we can to assess their swallowing function and make sure that it's where it needs to be by sending them to a speech pathologist and having barium swallow tests done and other techniques done, sometimes even camera visualization done. And then there are things that can be done to even help swallowing. For example, you would think that swallowing, when we take a pill and we can't swallow it and we put our head back and then we swallow, that actually makes things worse. You should chin tuck and swallow. That opens up the back of your throat so that you can swallow. And everyone's nodding. See, y'all know this, but to me, that's counterintuitive. Sometimes thin liquids increase your risk of aspiration. So we put thickenant in your liquids to try to minimize that. Sometimes thick liquids do that, so we thin them. That's why it's important to have a good speech pathologist that can tell you where to go with that. And then lastly, your question was about a feeding tube. And that's a very controversial topic for a lot of our patients is, should I have a feeding tube or not? I would say the majority of my patients say, Doc, I know the risk. I know if I swallow and it goes down the wrong pipe and it goes into my lungs, my risk of pneumonia is higher, and that's a risk I'm willing to take because I want to preserve my quality of life. Some patients that have severe trouble swallowing will say, you know, it's not comfortable for me to take medicine this way. So I'm going to take my medicine through a feeding tube, so to speak, so that it can help improve my quality of life. It's a personal choice and a family choice, I would say. And I'm here either way to support our patients. But I would always say when you get assessed, make sure that you're able to put your best foot forward and have enough dopamine in your system so that they can get a true representation of what your swallowing is. So I've got patients that use feeding tubes for their medicine just to make it easier and take a little bit by mouth. And I've got patients who won't even touch a feeding tube because that's not where they are and what they don't want. And either way, it's fine as long as you know the risk and the benefits, because feeding tubes don't actually reduce your risk of aspiration pneumonia. That's an important point. What they do is they make it easier for you to take medicine, and they make it easier for you to get calorie supplementation in order to not lose a bunch of weight. And so, because you need to be as healthy as you can when you're sick with Parkinson's. That's why we want to encourage folks to do exercise, among other things. So that's a very good question. I appreciate that. And that's just one of the many non-motor symptoms that we treat in Parkinson's disease. Yes, sir. At the end, at the back, rather. Festinating gait. And what's a treatment option for it? So what is a festinating gait? So remember Tim Conway on Carol Burnett's show? So my medical students don't know who Tim Conway is anymore, but by the way, so I have to come up with a new analogy. But a festinating gait is where your feet go from a walk to a run like that. That's a festinating gait. By the way, a fun game is watch a movement disorder talk. It's impossible for a movement disorder doctor to not act out their movement disorders. It's always a fun little game. Trust me, just try it out. Watch it for yourself. All right. So what do? That means that you have low dopamine. So we want to boost dopamine. Okay. That's what that symptom means. And how do we boost dopamine? Gosh, we have a million ways to do that. So we just want to make sure your dopamine levels get boosted. That's how we improve festination gait. And then I'll also tell you a really cool thing. I watched a gentleman recently. You heard I'm the upcoming president of the Texas Neurological Society, which is the largest state-run neurological society in the country. And this year is our 50th anniversary. So that's kind of cool. But anyway, I watched a guy from the Netherlands come and talk about freezing of gait. Now that's where your feet are stuck and you can't move. And he showed these videos of this beautiful this guy that had this beautiful dramatic effect when he listened to this wonderful opera, and this emotional response that he had when he heard this one particular type of opera. He was able to go from a frozen state to walking without any difficulty. And as soon as that opera would stop playing, he would be stuck again. The same type of gait was seen in a different patient, but his music of choice was this rock and roll song. And that was his way to get unstuck. He showed other patients with videos of one person chasing a tennis ball on a string that got him unstuck. He showed another patient that would bounce a tennis ball, catch it, bounce a tennis ball, catch it. And that's how he got unstuck. And then he showed other videos, which you're familiar with as well, that have a line. And if there's a laser line or a tape on a threshold, that you can step over that and it can help. So what that tells us is that there are cues, visual cues, auditory cues, all kinds of cues, even mind cues that you can do to help get unstuck. And that's very powerful for our patients with Parkinson's, but it's different and unique for every single patient. Listening to opera is not one of his, he says. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you, but it was for this gentleman. And that's what's kind of fun is patients often find out this stuff on their own. One guy learned that if he skipped, imagine how happy he would be. He skipped around everywhere, but that was his cue to get unstuck. So these are some of the principles that our physical therapists use in order to help our patients get unstuck. You're welcome. And Mary Jane, keep me good on the time because I'm just going till you tell me otherwise. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. The comment was several years ago, there was a viral video on social media, and this was this gentleman's patient in the Netherlands that he cannot walk, but he can get on a bicycle and he can ride all around his country. And why is that? Because that was his cue that helped him get unstuck. It's just how complicated Parkinson's is, but how the brain always keeps us humble. So that's why I say never. Yes. So that the comment after is he could get off the bike and temporarily walk before he got stuck again. So let's talk about that. Exercise is crucial for Parkinson's. You know how your primary care doctor says, make sure you eat right and you exercise? Well, your movement disorder doctor really means it because it makes a difference. And you tell me that. You tell me often that if you are exercising and you're boxing, and Christy and others know all about this, and this is what they preach as well, when you're exercising, you know that your Parkinson's symptoms are better. And if you have to take a, I thought that was rain. I was about to praise the Lord for rain, but it was just a trash can. But when you are exercising and you have to stop, you know that your tremor and other symptoms regress a bit. You tell me that. And then when you get back into it again, things start to improve. We now know that that's probably because there are certain chemicals that we're still identifying that are produced when a person with Parkinson's exercises. There are other chemicals besides dopamine that are produced that can actually help drive Parkinson's symptoms to improve. And that's being looked at as we speak. And that's probably the answer of why we've known for ages that exercise actually helps Parkinson's. And that gentleman displays that perfectly. And you saw how that viral video showed that principle. So it's a good comment. Thank you. Yes, sir. Yeah, great question. So this gentleman says in November, he's got an appointment with a movement disorder specialist. What should I expect? Well, the fun thing about movement disorder specialists like us is you put 5 of us in a room, you'll get 8 different opinions. I'm just teasing, kind of. No, it's true. So I'm biased, but you know, I don't have to know and worry about all of the brain and the spinal cord and the nerves because I'm not a general neurologist, but I know movement disorders really well. It's what I do every day. It's what my research is in, you know, and to be fair, it's very specialized. So I think that every patient with Parkinson's deserves to see a movement disorder specialist, but I just left the state of Oklahoma where there are not even neurologists in some parts of that state. And they're doing the best they can with anything they have in order to get proper care. And that's one blessing out of COVID is that telemedicine visits, because a lot of times patients say, you know, that doctor just watched me walk and do this and do that. And he said I had Parkinson's. He barely examined me. But remember, your exam starts from the moment you walk into the exam room, by the way we talk to you and hear your voice, by the way you pick up a pen, by the way you unbutton your shirt, by the way you take off glasses. We examine everything. And this is why my wife often slaps me in public and says, stop staring, because I'm observing everything and it tells me how your brain is working. So that is what you'll expect. And hopefully what you'll find is a very detailed exam and a discussion of how your symptoms, both motor symptoms and non-motor symptoms, can improve. That's what my hope is for. But I think the bottom line is we're blessed here in Central Texas that we have several wonderful movement disorder specialists. But you have to find a team that you click with. I think that's the other thing, is you just have to find someone that understands you and who's listening to you. The other comment that I'll make, especially since, you know, we have 2 PAs at our practice, is sometimes I hear a lot from all of you, and we do our very best to try to improve quality of care. So remember, perspective is everything. I just left a state that has a few movement disorder specialists in the entire state. It takes a village to treat our patients and to treat them really well. I can't possibly do everything there is, despite what my bio sounds like. And it really does take a team effort. So what I would encourage is, you know, when you're in front of a provider, any provider, whether they know their stuff or not, when you're asking questions and you're getting answers to them, or you're not getting answers to them, you know what their level of competency is and what their engagement is with you. And so I encourage you to not just focus on movement disorder physicians, but, you know, we're lucky that we have 2 PAs who are movement disorder PAs. And I forget the latest statistic, but I think there are only, Karina, do you know how many PAs for movement disorders there are in the country? So like 100? 100,000 PAs naturally, but then movement disorders, there are not that many. I'll tell you that. And Meredith, for example, is, and she's going to kill me when she listens to this, but she is part of some founding members to promote Parkinson's education to all of advanced practice practitioners in the country. Right here, our Meredith in Georgetown. And Karina is doing the same thing. Yeah. And so, so it takes a team. So I encourage you to consider not only doctors, but to consider our APP colleagues too, especially when they know their stuff. And that's my plug for good quality of care, because I don't want to just see patients every 15 minutes and see 40 patients a day, because something gets shortchanged in that encounter. And that's unfortunate, isn't it? But we do our very best to try to promote good quality care at our center. Okay. So with that, that's probably a good place for me to stop. I also want to recognize some of the other vendors here, because I am on the GAPS board as well for a little bit longer. And I just want to say thank you all for being here. In the device-aided therapies, I realized that I forgot to mention focused ultrasound. And I should not forget to mention that, because it is a very, very important therapy for our patients with tremor, whether you have Parkinson's disease or you have essential tremor. And what we're trying to do is to get some equipment here in Austin so that patients don't have to go to the 2 centers right now in the state of Texas, which is in Dallas or Houston. We're trying to bring it home to our patients in Central Texas. But that is a very cool and up and coming FDA approved indication for tremor, among other things like delivering chemotherapy and all kinds of stuff to the brain is by utilizing focused ultrasound. So Kara can tell you more about that. And she knows her Parkinson's as well, because she's been in this space a long time. So I'm sorry about that, but not to be forgotten for sure. I see Pam Rehab. We've already talked about Ritari and our DBS, Boston, Medtronic, and Abbott. In Bresia, we talked about 413 Fitness and Boxing, Grand Living, which is a palace, by the way. I enjoyed going to visit there and speak on Duopa. So again, we have some great vendors. We could not have this support group without the help of our vendors helping you and helping us. And so again, let's give them a round of applause as well. I hope I didn't forget anyone, but I just want to thank you all for your attention. Every October, I look forward to speaking to all of you, our GAPS group. Please take what you learned today and spread the word. One cool thing about Parkinson's patients and their loved ones is that they are not shy to tell other people about what they've learned. And that's how we propagate good information. So thank you for your attention and for not throwing tomatoes at me. It's my pleasure. Bye.
And a round of applause. Gosh, Dr. Soileau we were just so blessed to have him. And he is our medical consultant. So that's also a really, really nice thing that we have. Okay, with that said, we're going to keep moving right along. And let me, okay. So Deb, you can take me off of, and Don off of the big one. And let's see. There we go. Okay. And there's our thank you. And of course, as I mentioned earlier about our mantra, that is our mantra right here. And with that said, we are fortunate to have 413 Boxing and Fitness. As you can see, Carrie is already getting up here and Christy is too. Yay. We don't get Christy all the time, so we're lucky to have them both. Okay, super, super. So we are going to change the camera now. I'm going to do the stop share here. And we're going to move this one so that we can get these guys really big.
Really big.
Really, really, really big.
Hey, everybody. Hello, hello. All right. The gals from 413 are here. I'm Carrie Brinkater. If you are affiliated with 413 in any way, give me a big, oh yeah. Do y'all hear that? Oh my gosh. Hi guys, I'm Carrie. This is Christy, and it's great to see you. 413 Fitness, we're Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right here in Georgetown, 8 o'clock, 9:15, and 10:30. We have a spot for you. We teach 3 levels of fitness classes there. We teach a really high intensity class, a medium intensity class, and a lower intensity class. And I guarantee you'll fit in one of those classes. We have no fun, right? 413, none, zero. I'm kidding. We have an amazing time. I just want to share a very quick story for you. Well, a couple of quick stories. Number one, a very new fighter in our group just started and has been a week with us. Yesterday in class, we got on the floor for the first time. It was his first time to be on the floor, to get over on his hips, roll over onto his belly, roll back to his back, get up by himself unassisted. And then he and his wife went home and did it today. Can y'all believe that? So amazing. I'm so, so happy. It's so important to be able to get up and down off the floor. Yes.
That same fighter has already told people about our program. And his friend called me on Tuesday and said, my friend called me on the phone and we were talking and I realized his voice was a lot clearer than I had heard my friend. And I'm like, oh, really? Who's your friend? And I was like, I recognize that name. How do I know that name? And my husband says, he hasn't even joined our program yet. He's in his week trial and he's already recruiting for us. So guys, we appreciate, like Dr. Soileau said, y'all are the reason why GAPS keeps going. Y'all are the reason why 413 goes going. Our amazing coaches are the reason why we keep going, guys. Thank you so much for having us, Mary Jane. I really am really grateful. Next week is our 8-year anniversary, guys. We are growing, and we would love, if you've never come to try a class, please come try a class. We do a week trial. We have a scholarship program if finances is what's keeping you away, but there should never be a reason why you are not doing some form of exercise. But yes, Carrie, take it away.
Okay, can y'all hear me? Hi. Because you know I have to use my arms. Let's just start here. Yes, coach. I love that. Yeah. Let's just start here with this. Excellent. I know, Sam, you may not be able to hear me. Hi. See me. We have some of our team on Zoom as well. Okay. Keep marching. Keep marching. Arms up and down. Say it with me. Up, down. Up, down, up, down, down, up, down. Come on. Excellent. Now let's keep our legs square on. Arms out. You might smack the person next to you, especially if you're long. We're gonna go out and in. Out and in. Big punches. And in. Out and in. Out and in. Out and in. Two more. Out, in, out, in. All right, that's red. Good job, y'all. Now then, in our classes, we do some exercises sitting and we do a lot standing. So if you are able, let's go ahead and stand it on end. Okay? If you are challenged with your balance, you may stay seated. You may grab the walker. Okay? You stand right there with your walker as well. Okay, let's get a little voice activation. This is one thing that we like to do. We're going to count from 1 to 10. Okay? We're going to start 1 at a whisper. Just whisper. The more we count, the louder our voice gets. All right? But I want you to have your hands up because in 413 fitness, we also box. So each time we say a number, we're going to throw a punch. Okay? So 1, and by 10, if you've done it, give me an over. Here we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Down to 0. Ready? 10. It's kind of fun, right? You enjoyed over the last few weeks. It's called patterns. I'm going to teach you a pattern. Left, cross, left. Okay. Ready? Stay with me. Left, cross, left, 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 10. We go across midline because Parkinson's tells us we don't like to do that for some reason. So we do that. Okay, here's your second pattern. This one's a little bit. Bump. Snap. Bump. 10. Snap. Bump. 10. Snap. Bump. 10. Snap. Bump. 10. Left. Y'all think y'all can do all 8 of those together? I know you can. Okay? We get a lot of laughs while doing this one because we'll mess up or they'll try to mess me up. So watch out, right? Okay, big fingers. starting with that left. Ready? Here we go. Left, cross, left, tap, left, snap, bow, tap, left, cross, left, tap, tap, snap, bow, tap, left, tap, left, snap, bow. Open, close. Good. Good, good, good. Okay. Now then, we're going to close our fist. We're going to close our mouth. We're going to close our eyes really tight. And when I say open, we're going to open our eyes, open our mouth, throw open our fist, and we're going to say the letter A. All right, close them. Ready? Close the fist, close the eyes, close the mouth. Open. Into what we do at 413 Fitness. One more story I got to tell you. We have a fighter. Again, this is the brainchild of 413, and I'm so grateful for her. And I've been coaching at 413 for 3 years now, but we have a fighter. He started with us back in March. And he wasn't mowing the grass. He wasn't traveling. He was just sad. And he started in my low intensity class. And after a couple of months, I moved him to my medium intensity class. And then I saw his wife a few weeks later, and I get choked up because I hear these things all the time. His wife said, Carrie, he's mowing the grass again. He has not mowed the grass in 2 years. He's traveling on the bus with our son's football team. Their son is a high school football coach, and he's traveling on the bus. Y'all, being in community with like-minded people, as well as, just having fun. What you see is what you get. This is what we do at 413. So find us, come get a brochure, come talk to one of us. We would love to see you at 413. We've got 413 all in here. You can pretty much go up to half the people in here and they know who we are. So just ask them a question and they'll tell you. All right. Anything else, fighters? Okay. You know how we have to finish our day. Hands in. Hands in. We're going to say, keep fighting on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Keep fighting. Great job. Great job. That was awesome. 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 And by the way, I'm just curious. Did my husband hear all that about going to exercise? I know it. I tell you, he used to be there. I got to get him more motivated. Okay, let's see. Let me jump back here real quick. Thank you. By the way, Christy has a video that we have on our website that is how to get up off the floor, which is wonderful, wonderful. I want to thank you for those that are still staying here because, as you know, we need help to put up the table and the chairs, and that's part of our agreement in order to be able to be in this building is to be able to put all this stuff up. So Arlene, make your strong nurses stay too to help us. Yeah, they didn't know about that, did they? Okay. So now moving on, the big event. This is going to be our fundraiser. Not fundraiser, excuse me. Listen to me. Door prizes, kind of like a fundraiser, but it's door prizes. Yeah, that's right. You got some good ones. You'll be our runner. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. They're coming up. We have kind of a theme, kind of a, oh my, we've even got more stuff coming up. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the deal is there's kind of a theme, a cooking theme here going on. But let me let you put, and since you've got a, there you go. You got the mic. Yeah. All right. 2984 2984 2984. Going once, twice. 2984. Yes.
All righty.
All right.
So whatever you, okay. Ooh, what is that? That looks cool. This is a CRISPR. Okay, so some of you might want to know, how do I get these door prizes? We were going to be in a gala right before COVID, and some of these were donations before COVID. And I am clearing everything out for sure. And so as of Christmas, I will be totally out of them. So I've got some for our December meeting. So again, if you know of anybody, you patronize a place that you think would be a good door prize, go on and pick it up. Okay.